Act 2, Scene 3. That's what we are getting into. And this is a longish scene, and we will do this in 4 short videos so that it doesn't put too much of a pressure on you when you are listening to the explanation videos. Okay. Now, the first part of this particular video, see, the big act has already been committed between Act 2, Scene 1 and Act 2, Scene 2, right? Act 2, Scene 3 is the first part of it is called the Porter scene. Okay, and I will go through it a little slowly because it's a bit like the Launcelot scenes in Merchant of Venice. A bit foolish because there is a character called the Porter who is drunk and therefore he talks a lot of gibberish. So not very important in the overall context of the plot. Okay, but you never know if there is a googly question thrown and you may get a question related to the Porter. Maybe, let me see, maybe an MCQ or maybe a reasoning question, but I don't expect a longish 5 mark or 10 mark question from relating to the Porter. Okay. Now the scene is set in Macbeth's castle because that's where all the action is taking place, and the knocking is heard. Remember, the knocking is heard continuously, and this guy, the Porter, is introduced, and he is the gatekeeper at the castle of the Macbeths, and he jokes about the keeper, about being the keeper to the gates of hell. And that's very significant because some really hellish and negative activity has taken place inside the castle. So to that extent, he's right. So what Shakespeare would usually do is to kind of put these very meaningful lines in the mouth of someone who is looked at as some kind of a clown, right? And thereby bringing out the irony of something like this. That's what he has done in many of the plays. Now, this particular person, as I said, is also a heavy drinker, and therefore he provides comic relief after such a big activity, very negative activity, obnoxious activity has taken place before in the scene preceding this. So there is a tragic momentum, there is a tragic trajectory to the play, and therefore Shakespeare has introduced this to provide some kind of a comic relief to the audience and the reader. Okay, so that's the context of this particular scene. Now, the Porter says, here is a knocking indeed. Okay, what a lot of knocking. So he's irritated with the amount of knocking that is taking place. If a man were Porter of Hellgate, he should have old turning the key. Now, he says, if a man were to be the gatekeeper of hell, right? For the gates of hell, he would have to turn the key to open that gate quite often. That means there is so much of knocking, which means he will have to open the gates a number of times, turn the key to open the gates a number of times. Now, old turning the key is a slang and a colloquial phrase of the times of Shakespeare. Okay, so it's a colloquial phrase which you should just be familiar with, because that's how it would be used. In colloquial means very commonplace kind of lingo. Okay, now as I said, the dramatic irony, please notice. So if someone asks you the use of dramatic irony, it is here because he refers to, if saying a man were the Porter of Hellgate, so he is indeed the Porter of the gates of hell because of the hellish act which has been committed during the night inside the castle. Okay. Now, then the Porter says, knock, knock, knock. Who is there in the name of Beelzebub? Now, Beelzebub is another name for the devil, another name for Satan, right? Satan, Shaitan, all of them mean the same thing, right? So who is there in the name of Satan? So he's kind of invoking the name of Satan, right? Indeed, it is a farmer who has hanged himself. Here is a farmer that hanged himself on the expectation of plenty. Come in time, have napkins enow about you, here you will sweat for it. Now, what is the meaning of this? So he says that indeed it is a farmer who hanged himself because he had hoarded grain, expecting to sell it for a profit, right? But that did not quite happen. Plenty of returns means, the expectation of plenty means expecting plenty of returns. So he means to say that a farmer had hoarded grain, काफी सारा अनाज को बटोर के रखा था in order to sell it later when the prices would be high and thereby make money on it, thereby make a profit on it. Instead, he went bankrupt and he hung himself in despair because the prices went down. The prices crashed, so obviously he could not sell it for a profit. He became bankrupt and therefore he hung himself in despair. Now, then he talks to an imaginary farmer, saying that you have come at the right moment. Now there is no, I mean, he has not opened the door. So he's imagining that he has opened the door and he's talking to an imaginary farmer. So he says that you have come at the right time. I hope you have enough handkerchiefs with you, napkins, handkerchiefs with you, because here you are going to sweat a lot. The usual imagery of hell, where there are, there's a lot of oil, boiling, etc., and there's a lot of sweat, right? It's a lot of heat generated, because of which you sweat a lot. So he says that you will have to sweat a lot. So I hope you are carrying enough napkins or handkerchiefs with you. Now, what is the background to the use of the word farmer out here? Now, a few months before Macbeth was performed in the court, remember Shakespeare used to perform in the court of the English kings and queens. In this case, King James I was the patron of Globe Theatre as well. So a few months before Macbeth was staged, the gunpowder plot, which was a conspiracy to kill King James I, was unearthed, thereby saving the life of King James I. Now, the conspirators were encouraged by a person whose nickname was Farmer. So by making the farmer some kind of a greedy and a negative kind of a character, Shakespeare is trying to amuse King James I. That look at this person called Farmer who has to hang himself because he was greedy, but he went bankrupt because the farmer was a person who had encouraged the conspirators against King James I, which was unearthed, the gunpowder plot. So the Porter's example of using the name Farmer may well have been intentional on the part of William Shakespeare. Understood? Knock. Then he says again, knock, knock, who is there in the other devil's name? Faith, here is an equivocator that could swear in both. Now he says, then he goes to the next example. Okay, just move it up. So he says, maybe it is some kind of a conman. Equivocator means a conman, someone who is a slimy kind of a person, someone who is a cheat of some kind, who vowed his support, who kind of promised his support to two opposing sides, swear in both the scales against either scale. Scales against either scales means that he promised support to this side, he promised support to this side. Who normally does that? Someone who cannot be trusted, someone who is not trustworthy, right? So he says that it is probably now, after the farmer, it is this kind of an equivocator. Please remember this word from the point of view of MCQs in particular. He committed treason. Who committed treason enough for God's sake? Who committed treason enough for God's sake, yet could not equivocate to heaven? Oh, come in, equivocator. So again, he imagines that he is letting in the equivocator, an imaginary person. He still has not opened the gates. Please mind that. So he says that he committed treason in the name of God. Treason meaning he committed betrayal. He betrayed the trust in the name of God, but found that in the end that you cannot lie to God about your actions or get to heaven by swearing on both sides. That is, if you swear on both sides, if you promise on this side as well as this side, you cannot go to heaven. The heaven gate will not open in that case. And you cannot lie to God either about your actions. And because he has done so, he seems to have come in here and he says, come in, you scheming person. Then he again imagines knocking within. Knock, knock, knock. Who is there? Faith, here is an English tailor come hither for stealing out of a French horse. Now, it's a third character. The first was a farmer, the second was a conman, a schemer, and now it is an English tailor. So he's imagining, again I repeat, इसने अभी तक दरवाजा खोला नहीं है. Okay. अगर दया होता तो अभी तक दरवाजा तोड़ देता. Daya as in the Daya of CID, for those who are not familiar. So knock, who is there? Indeed, it is an English tailor who used less than, skimp means who used less than necessary fabric or cloth needed to make pants in the baggy French style. Now, the Frenchmen were known to be the most stylish of the lot, right? So if you had to make French baggy pants, you needed a certain amount of cloth. So he says that you can heat your tailor's iron here in the fires of hell. That is, the iron can be heated in this hell, the iron, in order to iron the clothes. So the tailor has basically, the meaning of this slightly complicated and complex passage is that the tailor has for years stolen cloth by cutting the garments of his customers. Okay, so he would say that I need 2 meters, but you would actually need only 1.5 meters. So he would kind of take away the extra cloth that he would have ordered. So he says that he has done so, but to do so while making French hose. Now hose are tight-fitting garments. They are tight-fitting garments because then it would be detected. Because if it is a loose kind of garment, you can actually cheat by saying that, I have used this much amount of cloth, because it will not be detected, because it would be a loose-fitting garment. But when you are making French hose, which is a tight-fitting garment, it would be difficult to actually cheat. It would be easier for anyone to detect. So that's what has happened in the case of this English tailor. Okay, which is why he has come out here. Knock, knock, never at quiet. What are you? But this place is too cold for hell. I will devil porter it no further. I had thought to have let in some of the professions that go into primrose way to the everlasting bonfire. So next he says, again it's knocking, because he's not yet opened the door. Okay, he says, who are you? This place is too cold to be hell. Hell is supposed to be hot, but at this point in time, it seems to be rather cold. I will stop pretending to be the gatekeeper to the gates of hell, to the gatekeeper to the devil. And I had wanted to let someone from each of the professions, agriculture, tailoring, a scheming person. He wanted to kind of let in different kind of persons who had given into temptation and thereby landed up in hell. Primrose way to the everlasting bonfire. It means had given into temptation into hell. They had fallen into temptation and thereby they were landing up in hell. Farmer had given into the temptation of making money. Schemer, again to make cheat people. The tailor also to cheat people of their fabric or cloth. So they had given into temptation and they had all landed up in hell. Primrose way to the everlasting bonfire. Bonfire means, everlasting means hell, where the fires are always burning. Remember this. Everlasting bonfire is a description of the way hell actually looks. So he says, in a moment, anon, in a moment, I pray you remember the porter. Please remember the porter. Okay. Please do not, and also please do not forget to give the gatekeeper a tip. Okay, that's what he means. I pray you remember the porter. And that's when the doors actually open, when the gates actually open, Macduff and Lennox walk in. Macduff, was it so late, friend, before you went to bed, that you do lie so late? So he says, did you go to bed so late yesterday that you're having a tough time getting up now? Okay, lie. Of course, he's referring to the fact that, he's been lying, but lie also is a double meaning. Lie is also referring to, speaking a lie, jhoot bolna, right? But here is kind of, if you were to take him at face value, he's saying that did you go to bed so late that you are finding it very tough to get up at this hour? Porter says, that's right. We were drinking till about 3 o'clock. We were carousing till the second cock. That is, till 3 o'clock is being referring to. Carousing means we were drinking. Macduff, is thy master stirring? Is your master awake? Okay. And drinking results, we were drinking till 3 o'clock. So Macbeth enters. Our knocking has awaked him. Here he comes. Good morrow, noble sir. Macbeth says, good morrow, both. Okay, now in some of the editions, you would find that, there are some references to what are the results of drinking, which would not be there in many of the editions also. Okay, so you need to see what is in your edition. Let me just have a look at this particular thing, because it does not seem to be in this particular edition. Let me have a look at it. 1 minute. Yeah, so let me just say it's not here in this particular text. It says, Porter says, Faith, sir, we were carousing till the second cock, and drink, sir, is a great provoker of three things. That when you drink, it actually leads to three specific developments. Okay, it results in three specific things. So Macduff says, what three things does it result in? So Porter says that indeed drinking results, one, in a red nose. Okay, nose painting to indicate a swollen nose because of over drinking. Sleep, that you sleep more, and you also have the urge to urinate more. So it also provokes desire, but also hinders sexual performance. It can make them sleep and leave them hanging, right? So it's basically a lot of body and vulgar talk, which has been edited from the ISC edition from this passage. Okay, so I don't think most of the books would have that. Very little of it. These two lines are there in some of the editions. It's not there out here. It's already been edited in this particular PDF that I have. Okay, so Macduff says, I believe that drink gave all of this to you last night. You know, you had this as a result of that. So Porter says, yes, sir, it did. Drinking told me that I was a liar, and it told me in my face itself. Very throat on me means it told me directly to me. But I got my revenge on drinking. I was too strong for it. It may have weakened my legs as a result of drinking, because you are feeling very wobbly, the result of over drinking, that you feel very wobbly. But it made me unsteady, but I found a way to vomit all that I had drunk and laid it directly on the ground. That is, shift to cast him means I laid it on the ground. That is, he vomited all of that. And at that stage is when Macduff says, is your master awake? Referring to Macbeth, whether he is awake. So we will pause video number 1 of Act 2, Scene 3 out here, because this is the passage that deals directly with the Porter. As I said, he's not directly linked to the overall plot of the play, but because of all the gibberish and nonsense that he spoke, pretty much like Lancelot, he becomes a side character which could come as a googly in your question. So we need to kind of pay attention to it. Once you go through the notes, you shouldn't have any issues with it. Okay, so now I'll meet you in Act 2, Scene 3, explanation video number 2. Tata, bye-bye.